Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where Executive Coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hello there, leaders. Today, we are going to talk about a super fun, super light topic, overcoming your leadership fears. Okay. We're talking about how to face your leadership fears, what they look like, what they sound like, and I'm going to give you some steps to overcome them and how to face them. Before we dive into that, as always, I like to give a little bit of a personal update about what's going on here around the Cowan household. It's beginning of December in 2020, and this weekend, our youngest, our son, turns 11 on Saturday. And so his request was, we are taking him to the Magic Kingdom in Orlando. His request was all based around food. He really wants a turkey leg. He's obsessed with the turkey legs that are served in the Magic Kingdom. And so we are going to fulfill that desire for him and head out to Magic Kingdom on Saturday. So that's going to be some fun times for us. And yeah, we're getting ready. And I think I had mentioned this before. We're getting ready for Christmas in Tampa. So it's our first Christmas here and a little bit different. Looks a little bit different this year just because we are building a house. So we have all of our stuff in storage and we haven't really fully moved into our house. We're in temporary housing right now. And so we don't have all of our Christmas stuff. So it looks and feels a little bit different for us. And we're all kind of getting used to that. And we're going to have more experiences outside of the house for this holiday and spend more time outside of the house than we would typically normally spending it at home with family. So looking a little different. So we're all kind of getting used to that. All right. So facing your fears. Why we need to do this as leaders is, again, I think you know this cognitively, that as leaders, there's so many within our care and we impact so many people within the organization. And again, while I think we understand and inherently know this, sometimes the voice of our fears, it tries to be louder and really drown out the desire for us to lead our team to success. What I mean by that is a lot of times we're getting caught up in the fears that are kind of running through our head, that are on like default, just kind of coming up for us. Again, we'll kind of talk a little bit about what those fears kind of present as and what they sound like. But a lot of times we start to, as these thoughts are running through our head, like they start to get to the point where they're holding us back, right? These fears become louder than the cognitive desire that we know we want to lead our teams, we want to make them successful, and we know we need to like move through some of these to get to that point. So as a leader, as an executive, the ability to do this and have mind management as a part of our skill set, super important, but it's not necessarily one we talk about a lot. It's a skill that in the leadership toolkit, it's a skill that's rarely really discussed, but it's so crucial to leading large teams. And this ability, as the stakes get higher and higher and the decisions that we make impact hundreds, if not thousands of people, and sometimes millions and billions of dollars, right? The decisions get bigger, they get higher stakes, they get more critical, right? Like it's all of that. A lot of times, again, we're not taught always to work through some of the fears that come up as we make some of those decisions. And so we're going to talk today about fear, what it sounds like, what it looks like, how it presents, and then how to work through it. Okay. So what it sounds like, what I hear, and again, I'm going to use some examples that I have come across in my 25 plus years of being within the workforce, but also coaching a lot of executives. I get to hear from the front lines what exactly is happening and what's running through their minds. So we're going to talk about what it sounds like. Okay. So if this is you, hang in there. Okay. So I got some notes here and I pulled this again from notes of coaching. So I'm not sure if I'm making the right hiring decision. So this comes up around, executive or C-suite level roles. What happens if I get this decision wrong? What's going to happen? How will it impact the team? All of that, right? All of that comes up around hiring, big hiring decisions. I'm afraid to have this difficult conversation. Okay. I deal with this one tons, like a lot of times, right? difficult conversations around feedback that are keeping me up at night. I'm afraid, I'm anxious to meet with the board and present information. I'm afraid to deliver bad news to the team. I'm afraid to confront somebody, right? All those decisions that need to be made around difficult conversations, and really, again, the ability to move through them with less fear. Projects, right? Projects or sales pitches or write the thing, the work. I'm afraid this project is going to fail. I'm afraid to make the sales pitch, or I'm nervous about making the sales pitch. And then that piles on the weight, right? If it doesn't work, all of this is riding on me. I have so many people in the organization that are dependent on the sales pitch or this project or whatever it may be, and really carrying the weight and the livelihood of everyone within the organization based on the outcomes of some of these projects or deals that go or don't go through. All the outside factors, right? So how is this recession or potential impending recession going to impact this? What happens if the whole company goes under and we have to do massive layoffs, right? Like all this, you can see it's just compounds. And a lot of times when you get to the point of that level of leadership, you don't necessarily have a ton of people that you can turn to. There's not, you can't talk to your direct reports necessarily about all these things, or sometimes there's not a peer set within the organization, right? It feels lonely as you, again, continue to ascend up through the top in the organization. And at times, again, these voices these thoughts get so loud that it feels like I'm an imposter, right? And this is how this sometimes shows up. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't belong here. I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. I need some feedback. So it all kind of culminates, and sometimes it presents itself in this way. So again, it may not always come up for you of like, I'm afraid to be a leader and lead. Not the case at all, but it comes up through all of these different things that we're faced with as we, again, move through our careers. So let's talk about, why does this show up? So, all right, we're going to get deep here. So in primitive times, our focus on survival meant seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and exerting the very least amount of energy. So these three things that we were seeking out, sometimes modern day is referred to as the motivational triad, right? So I'll say that again: seek pleasure, avoid pain, don't exert energy. Well, if you're able to do those things in primitive times, that meant survival, right? It meant you were able to be successful by just surviving, or by surviving the day, okay? So today, society and our leadership needs within organizations are way more complex. So to be successful as leaders, we have to use our brains for completely different things: reasoning, planning, strategizing, prioritizing, solving problems. And this means we have to do the exact opposite of those three things that were in the motivational triad. So we have to delay pleasure, right? We can't get automatic gratification by just doing whatever we want and, sitting on the couch and watching Netflix all day. We have to go out and experience and almost invite discomfort, right? We have to move through discomfort and uncomfortable situations, and, maybe emotional pain, maybe not be physically be in pain, hopefully, to be at work, but we have that emotional or discomfort or that nervousness, that anxiousness. Like, we have to invite it, right? We have to be comfortable with it. And we all know when we go to work, when we're leaders, we have to expend a lot of energy. We have to take massive action. We have to go out and make a lot of decisions. We have to, go out and accomplish massive goals, right? And so this exact opposite of the motivational triad that got us to where we are today, that got us to exist. And thankfully, our ancestors listened to that, right? Helped us get to where we are today. But again, being in the corporate environment, being a leader in a leading large team is doing the exact opposite of what our brain is programmed to do. So when those thoughts come up that we were talking through and how they present themselves before, that's why our brain is somewhat involuntarily giving us some of these thoughts, right? Because if the brain is saying, hey, I'm freaked out, right? I'm not sure about the outcome of that decision, or I'm not really sure if we should do this, or, right, I don't know if we're going to get the sales pitch or not, right? It's a way of saying, scan the horizon for danger. Maybe we need to go back in the cave, stay kind of safe, ultimately, if we don't take action, right, we can avoid all of these things and kind of just stay warm and cozy and comfy in the cave. Now, again, cognitively, as leaders, we know that that's not true, but these voices, I want to say these voices kind of sounds a little out there, but our thoughts, right, which really are these thoughts that are coming up and popping up for us in our head that are telling us these things, they may not always be based in factual reality, right? And a lot of times they're just presenting fear. So we as leaders, we have to overcome some of these instinctual thoughts and retrain and rewire our brain to get super comfortable with this discomfort or this fear, as I'm labeling it on this conversation that we're having today. We have to reassure ourselves, hey, nothing's gone wrong. There's really nothing going wrong. So a lot of times when we have these things, we think, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter. I don't belong here. Something's going wrong. Because I know that, yeah, there's nothing going wrong here. Experiencing fear, discomfort, doubt is also not a sign to quote unquote metaphorically crawl back into a cave and stop leading. So a lot of times we have these things come up and we think, well, that's a sign I need to stop, right? And it's going to hold me back. And again, it's going to put me into that state of inaction, if you will. So, okay, how do you do this? I know you're like, okay, got it. Hopefully you're still with me. We got a lot of existential stuff going on here with our ancestors and our way our brains are programmed. But let's talk about what do you do instead? So 5 steps we're going to talk about. Number 1, call out the fear. If you have a thought that is causing the fear, shine some light on it. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this. The simplest way is just write it down. So if you're struggling with a decision that you need to make, or a pitch you need to make, just say, I'm nervous about making this pitch. I'm nervous about making this hire, or I'm not sure if I should have this difficult conversation, or whatever it is. I'm afraid to confront this person and give them feedback, right? Just write it down, right? So shine some light on it. Okay. That's step 1. 2, go to worst case scenario with this fear. Okay. I did this with a client and we worked through and we talked about, okay, let's just assume in this conversation that this thing is true. What is the absolute worst thing that could happen if this fear were to go to the absolute worst case? So kept proceeding through it. And most of the times, because this worst case scenario is so unlikely of where your brain is taking it, that usually you can just coach yourself right out of it, because it's just so ridiculous about our worst case and the worst fear that we have. Usually you can get yourself there, like, okay, that's absolutely ridiculous. I'll give you an example. Working with a client and working on making, again, a really big sales pitch. So making a pitch to another company, and had a lot of anxiety around it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what's the worst case, right? What's the worst case scenario? They say no, right? So sale doesn't go through. Then because that doesn't go through, the confidence is shot, can't make future pitches, then we lose, right? All revenue, we end up going under, we have to terminate everybody, all this, right? Kind of kept going, like, what's worse? What's worse? What's worse? What is the worst case scenario? And again, by the time we got to the end of it, it was so unlikely that this was going to happen. And there's so many other situations where we could say that's actually not even remotely likely. Now, the person could say no. We'll start with the first one. That is a possibility. But then again, as the worst case scenario unfolded, it was very unlikely that the other steps of where we were headed with that were going to happen, right? This company was not going to ultimately fold based on this one pitch. So that's step 2, going to worst case scenario. 3, so let's say you go to worst case scenario. Sometimes we want to look at it. Fear is not a bad thing, right? And I think we label sometimes emotions and anxiety or nervousness, all this is negative. But again, as we were talking through the motivational triad, what's cool about it is, again, our ancestors survive because of that fear. We've gotten to the place where we are today because sometimes we have fear of we don't run out in traffic, we don't put our hands on hot stoves, we don't do certain things that keep us safe. And that part of our brain is totally valid and warranted. So at times, again, after you've called out that fear and you've shown a little bit of light on it, you can ask yourself, is this fear warranted and is it valid? And if we still think, yeah, this is warranted, right? And again, you can challenge yourself on the thinking, but you can also ask yourself, do I want to change course and do I need to change course here, right? Because you've got an executive functioning part of your brain that can help you understand is if there is merits to this fear, you can decide, I want to change or even take different steps. Maybe do a little bit more research, maybe do a little bit more prep, whatever it may be. So that's step 3, decide if the fear is warranted. Step 4, if you decide, yep, I want to proceed, this fear is not necessarily warranted, go ahead and proceed. Do the next step in the process. Do the next best thing, right? Whatever you were planning on doing, go through with it. Feel the fear as you're doing it, right? You can still carry along that fear. You don't need to wait for this moment where you feel totally confident in what you're doing, that you need to feel amazing and great and light. Not the case. A lot of the times what we do is we just hold that fear with us, put it in your pocket, feel that fear and go through it anyway. And when those thoughts kind of present themselves to you, like, what do we think we're doing? Just say, yep, opinion noted. Know you're a little afraid. We're going to go ahead and do this thing anyway. Okay. And then step 5, after you've done this, whatever this next step is, whatever you faced, by all means, get your own back no matter what the outcome. Okay. So in business, as leaders, we are not striving to do everything perfectly. The outcome of, again, making a pitch is not always to get a yes. The outcome of making a decision is not always for it to be the exact perfect right one. And again, I know ideally, sure, right. But we all know as leaders, our goal is to move through, make decisions, learn from them, get better, right? To try over and over again until the right thing clicks, right? It is not to do everything 100% perfect with 100% certainty all the time. Just impossible, right? And again, cognitively, I know you know this. So when you go through with that tough thing, get your back no matter what the outcome, okay? And then celebrate that win, moving through, overcoming that motivational triad, overcoming that primitive brain, and then give yourself that dopamine hit by whatever means you give yourself that gold star, that pat on the back, whatever it is. It's going to reinforce that behavior of moving through discomfort. All right. So again, the more we can overcome some of those fears that we have that are just innate, that come to us instinctually, the more we start to reward ourselves for moving through it, doing the tough thing anyway. Sure, listening to it at times when it feels really valid and real, we can decide what, again, it's based in reality, what we want to change. The more we reward through it, the more that dopamine hit of rewarding yourself for doing it is going to start to override that programming. Okay, it's going to override that primitive brain. It's going to override the fears, and really looking at it, it's going to help you with the mind management. So you can lead your team to success no matter what. For us to expect that leaders have zero fear and zero obsess around what they're doing, exactly the opposite. And how you manage your mind and how you move through it is going to set you apart from other leaders. Okay. All right. If you want any help with this at all, please reach out to me. I am on so many different platforms, but easiest way to get a hold of me is my website. It's Alicia Cowan Coaching. It's ELISIAKEOWN coaching.com. And I'd be so happy to help you work through this. If any of this feels true to you and you want some help with it, be happy to help. I work with leaders all over the country, one-on-one and in group settings. So happy to help. And thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.